All right, welcome back to Rambling in a Closet. This is Kyle. Screw it. I want to talk about politics. I can't stand this. I have never enjoyed the whole idea that you can't talk no politics and religion. You know, you're going to go to Thanksgiving with your family, and your parents are like, just remember, don't talk politics. Just leave it alone. And it's a meme. It's a universal thing for Americans. Seems like everybody can relate. Most everybody seems like has this sort of there's certain things you don't talk about around each other because it just never goes right. It always ends in yelling and angry and scowling looks afterwards. After the conversation ends, and I gotta say, I really hate that. What a detriment to, I think, our society that we can't talk about some of the most important things in our lives in the country. We are encouraged by culture not to talk about with each other. And that, it annoys me. And so I'm not going to fall for it. The reason I haven't really talked about political stuff in however many episodes I've recorded in the closet is because the way I was seeing it is like, well, I want to talk about ways of thinking and just ramble. And I don't want potentially I don't want you to like start tuning in and go, oh, geez, he's one of those guys. And then completely, and not to say that you're that type of person, but it happens. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you're guilty of it. We hear politics from people we don't like and we go, ugh. Like, you see like the Avengers came out for Kamala Harris. Over the past couple of weeks, like all of the actors, and it was like, oh, great, man, I just want to watch a superhero movie. I don't want to know your political opinion, whether or not I like it or not. Like, there's like two actors. I like the Shazam guy. The guy who did Shazam came out for Donald Trump, and I'm like, well, okay, that takes guts because basically your career is ruined now. But again, I don't care. Just why do you have to go out and say that? I appreciate. Now, here's the thing: because of the way the current culture is set up, I am a little more less caring of people who come out on one side of the political spectrum than the other. And obviously there's a bias because I am on that side of the political spectrum. But also they're the counterculture, right? The Shazam guy coming out for Trump is a lot more dangerous for his career than all of the Avengers coming out for Kamala Harris. As evidenced by they all did it. All of them. And they weren't worried about it. Whereas the Shazam guy, he's probably never going to get a movie again anytime soon. Well, maybe he is now because Trump won. I don't know if you know this. It's November 8th when I'm recording this. So a few days after Trump got the Electoral College and the popular vote. That hasn't happened in 20 years, by the way. A Republican candidate has not gotten the popular vote in 20 years. So basically that's saying from the majority of people in the country is you better do what you told us you're going to do. It's what do they call that? A mandate. It's a public mandate to Donald Trump. You better do what you said you were going to do. Now, you listening might not agree with what he wants to do or said he wants to do, but that is what happened this election is that. So he better keep up his promises or the people who voted for him are going to be very upset. But hey, he can't go for another term, so who cares, right? Which is kind of cool, right? This is neat. When you have a president, this is how I see it, okay? Because not only did his terms got interrupted by Joe Biden, right? So he wasn't forced to stick with Mike Pence. He didn't have to stick with the guy. So the vice president is such a silly position to me because people who are running for the first time, they have 8 years to go for. So they're going to try to run again. They need to pick somebody, a vice president, who won't outshine them. So they have to be lesser in a way than they are. But then you're stuck with them for 8 years unless you get another vice president, which is kind of embarrassing to look at. But because of Trump's situation, which is that he did it with Pence, and then 4 years of Joe Biden, and now he's gotten to choose another VP, but because he knows that he's not going to get elected again, he can actually choose a VP that's competent. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, J.D. Vance, but he's not a crazy person, He makes sense when you listen to him. Again, you don't even have to agree with what he says. He's clearly just not a stooge. He's not put there to just be a placeholder and to be lesser than the president. He could be the next 4 years after that. That's what they're planning. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that. That's the kind of politics I really actually don't like talking about because it's just a political strategy, and that's silly. What I want to do is talk about political stuff, but not have to like reference sources and prove to anybody. I'm not trying to win an argument. I just want to think, just in an open space, rambling into a microphone, just to think about political stuff and to not have to worry about being called a racist or a libtard or being accused. By the way, my views go against almost every political party that's out there. I am kind of politically homeless, as they say, which is kind of a cliche, but it's true. I am not, pretty libertarian, I guess. That's the close. I'm not even libertarian, but that's as close to it, I think, a political ideology that I can lay my hands on. But I honestly just like having opinions on things that are devoid of any central ideology. I just want to know the truth. I just want to know what's real. That's you. If you can just provide to me the truth, I can then make up my mind on that. I mean, isn't that nice? Isn't that great? That's just what I want to happen. For an easy one, like an example, the minimum wage, right? For some reason, the minimum wage is political. I don't know why. I can, you know what? I do know why. I'm not saying this is the reason, but the reason the reason the minimum wage is politicized is because one of the parties, wants to use it as a way of saying, hey, look, if you vote for me, you get more money. And so if you come out against that and go, well, that's actually not how it works, then they go, oh, well, you must be against my supporters making more money if they vote for me. You must be against Americans making more money. And the person who was anti-minimum wage goes, no, I actually want them to make money too. This is just not the way to do it. And there you go. It becomes political. It's not. It shouldn't be political. It's common sense. There are some things, there are quite a few things, but some things for sure that you can just look at. And with just thinking about it, I'm not like pointing out, massive studies. I'm not saying this person said that, because the problem with doing that is I could say, hey, this person said that, and that's why you should believe it. And you could go, well, I don't see this person as an authority. I don't see this source as an authority. I don't trust that source that you're giving me. It's like then you start playing I don't trust your source game. But with the minimum wage, with a lot of other things, but one of them being the minimum wage, you can just kind of think about it and derive, using just plain logic and a basic understanding of economics, you can kind of just figure out that the minimum wage is pretty stupid. Now, by the way, again, I don't want to point this out. No, you know what? I won't. I was going to say the minimum wage comes from racism back in the post-slavery days, where they bumped up the minimum wage so they could price out black labor. Don't quote me on that. Go research it at your own will if you want. But that last time I checked, that was true. But then again, see, I'm citing sources, right? And then you can go, oh, that didn't happen. And I don't want you to feel like you have to do that. And I don't. And maybe you were right to think that, but I don't want to have that part be part of the conversation. Because let's just think about it from a logical point of view, the minimum wage, right? Okay, what's the idea? Well, the idea is that the idea is based on like the livable wage. Well, you should never have to work a job where you can't afford to live. Now, that is a very vague statement because who decides how much money you need to live? Like, obviously, you have to be able to afford an apartment, or a house. But then again, if you want a more expensive house, does that count? Like, is there a minimum set? Like, this is the problem with minimum wage and the idea of a livable wage, is it really makes no sense. Because then you have to either say, well, there's no maximum. You could choose how you could buy, like, for instance, if you're trying to figure out what the livable amount of money it is that you need to spend on food, well, first you have to calculate where you live. Second, you have to calculate, like, think about it. If I want to buy organic food versus regular food, I'm paying more money. So is that what we should be aiming at for the livable wage? But then it can get out of control. You can buy the super organic avocados that cost like $10 an avocado. And then the government's like, well, yeah, that's not covered in the livable wage thing. But then you have the government saying what you can buy. See, the little hands of government just get everywhere if you bring up the livable the amount of money you need to live. Like, that's such a weird number. You cannot calculate it unless you do bare necessities. And then if you do bare necessities, well, then you have an institution known as the government describing what that means. And that doesn't make me comfortable. I don't think that makes anybody comfortable. But then let's just go to the idea of the actual minimum wage, which is that we are going to say that a company has to pay you at minimum this amount of money to do any job. Like, you want to be a host at Red Lobster? Well, they have to pay you $15 an hour to be a host. You know what they're going to do instead? I worked in restaurants for 10 years. You know what they do if they can't find a host? Or if they don't want to pay for a host? The manager is just in the front of the house, and the manager seats people. Or the servers do it when they're free. Or people just seat themselves. If a company has to pay $15 an hour to some kid who has no work experience, $15 an hour to seat people, they're not going to do it, and that job goes away. And then there you go. There's now one less job because they were forced to pay. Hold on. It doesn't make any sense. Why? But let's just say, okay, let's just say they keep the job and they pay the host $15 an hour. Well, they're spending more money now on labor, especially with everybody in the back of the house. You know, like if the costs of labor go up, they're not just going to eat the cost. They're not going to just lose profit because the government said you had to pay this much for your labor. They're just going to make everything more expensive. So the iced tea goes from $1.79 to $2. Might only be a 30 cents increase, but if that's on everything, everywhere in the economy because of the government putting in a minimum wage, that hurts. All the prices go up, and then everybody now has more money because they're being paid more, but they're also spending more money because everything's more expensive. See, this is the great thing about the minimum wage is it is so easy to just think about. And you go, oh yeah, this is a stupid idea. And you might be asking, well, what, Kyle? Should the minimum wage be zero? Actually, technically, yes. The minimum wage should be zero. There should not be a minimum wage. Here's the thing. If I'm going to go out for a job, and the job, let's say I'm let's say I'm 20 years old, I didn't go to college, and I'm trying to be like a construction worker. And they say, oh, well, and they're like some super evil, greedy corporation. And they're like, well, if you want to come and be a construction worker, that's fine, but we're going to pay you $2 an hour. And you'd go, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. No one can force you to work for a wage that you don't want to work for. Now, the counter argument, understandably so, is, well, Kyle, what if you just can't find a job? Listen, I don't know. I think the thing is because the minimum wage exists, there's almost no negotiation. There's no wage negotiation anymore. You just show up and they go, well, this is what we pay our employees. And you go, well, okay, I understand that, but that's, I actually think I'm worth more than that. I can show it to you over time, and maybe we can work something out. And they go, no, we just do this. This is what we pay you, and then at the 6 months we might give you a raise. And it's like, yeah, but what if I'm more efficient in the first week than all of your other employees? Can I get a raise then? And they're like, no. Like, there's no negotiation anymore. I'm sure there's some, but for the most part, no. In like corporate jobs and in most jobs that I've done, there's no negotiation. And it's because the minimum wage is there, because the government did the negotiation for everybody, and it's already higher than it should be, probably. Like, imagine how much cheaper things would be if the minimum wage wasn't so high. The minimum wage is $15 in a lot of places. I am looking for jobs. When I look for jobs, I see a job that's doing $20 an hour, and I think that's low because of what we're used to now. That's ridiculous. When I lived in New Mexico, it was $7.50. The state minimum wage was $7.50. And I got a job for $10 an hour, and I was like, that's cool. I mean, that's good enough, I guess. That was 10 years ago. I don't know, man. And now I'm used to being a server, so you make so much money as a server and a bartender. I don't understand why most people don't do that. Anyways, I digress, though. And this is how, I'm sure, here's the problem with someone just talking into a microphone about his politics is that he's probably, like, I am probably missing some things. And there is probably something that you're over on the other end thinking, oh my gosh, Kyle, I can't believe you said that. This is the clear counter argument to what you just said that makes all, and then we can't talk, right? We can't have that conversation, you and I, and we can't go a little deeper, but that's okay. I mean, I am willing to have my mind changed here, obviously, and it's hard for you to do that to me because this is really just a one-way conversation, let's be honest. But just so you know, I am willing to change my mind on this if someone can talk to me about it in a way that makes sense. And the most powerful I can think of, the most powerful counter argument, and I think really the only one, is that, well, it's there so that corporations can't take advantage of their employees. And I go, yeah, I get that. But the problem is we live in a society where you think that's possible. And I would like to be more like kind of rear our children up to be more resilient and to maybe not allowed to, maybe not willing to be taken advantage of by corporations. Especially nowadays in modern society. Let's say like the minimum wage is abolished. Everything's still kind of $10 an hour because that's just where things are now. You know, people aren't going to settle for less, but it's like right at around $10 an hour. And, you know, all of a sudden this corporation comes out. There's like news about Walmart. Well, Walmart's now paying their employees $5 an hour. And it's like, that's bad press, right? Walmart's just going to get bad press and they're going to lose money now. So especially, you know, you can make an argument, even though from what I know, the minimum wage was brought into the equation to stop black people from having jobs, even though that's pretty much why I think it started. Let's just say it had a purpose 100 years ago, you know, maybe, because I don't even know, right? I don't want to go back. I can't look back that far. I don't know. But let's just say that's the case. Nowadays, I don't think it is, because you just get bad press if you were taking advantage and if you were taking advantage of and underpaying your employees. Well, first of all, your employees, those employees could quit and go somewhere else. But also, you're going to get some bad press, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this corporation, they're not taking care of their wada. You know, nowadays, you know, I just can't see a reason for it. It only hurts the economy. Every time the minimum wage goes up, you can just look at charts. Just look at them. They're fun. They're really fun to look at, because every time the minimum wage goes up, you know what else goes up? The cost of living. And I don't want to quote that because that's a statistic that we can argue about. Like I said, we should just be able to think about it. But that how can that not be true? Just logically thinking about it, of course it's true. It just makes sense that a corporation, if they have to start paying more for labor, they will either get rid of the jobs or they will make their product more expensive so they maintain their profit. This is also something that's wrong, I think, with the current like corporate structure. And which is probably, and I don't know how to fix it. I'm a big free market guy. I don't know how to fix it. But I don't like the idea of like investing in a company. I do, because you're like, oh, I believe this company I want to give them some of my money. But the problem with that is some people will do it because they want to make a profit in the future. They want their value to go up, which means the stockholders, right? They expect growth. They expect the company to make more than they did last quarter and more than they did the quarter before that. The problem with that, this weird, I don't understand why we think like this. Growth is not forever. This is why I don't like the idea of progressivism, is because inlaid into that word is this idea that you will always and forever progress. But there are situations where you no longer need to progress. If there is a store on the side of a road in Main Street, and they bring in X dollars every year, let's say every month they bring in X amount of dollars, and maybe some months it's lower, some months it's higher, but on average it's X dollars a month. Great. If they're able to pay for everything and have a little on the side for them to use as an income, these business owners, okay, that's all you need. You don't need to open up a new business. Unless, of course, your idea is profit. And if that's the case, that's fine. You should want to make money. And if you want to keep growing your business, great. Okay, but at some point that stops. At some point you hit, this is what I didn't understand about, like I used to work at Red Lobster, right? And there was this idea that you always had to do better than the year before. And I'm thinking, yeah, I get it. Like, that's not a bad, like, obviously you should want to be better. But there is a certain, like, you max out. There are only so many people who want to come to Red Lobster on a Tuesday night and buy all the appetizers and beer. Like, it never happens, and there's only so many times that it does happen, and it's not going to keep going up unless the population of the town grows, right? Then it's understandable. If you have a consistent population growth, then yeah, it makes sense that you can guess that you're going to have more people coming into the restaurant. But if everything is stable, then everything should be stable. And you shouldn't be looking back and going, well, how can we increase our profit margins? Which is not a bad thing in and of itself. But the problem with that being there is that when you try to add things like the minimum wage, well, these people are in place. They want to make their profit. They don't want to lose money. They're in this to make money. And so when you tell them they have to pay more for labor, they're just going to raise their costs. That's just how it is. I don't know how to fix that. I don't think you can, because it's the free market. The government should not interfere in the free market, in my opinion. So it's just like a a truth of life. Like, there are trade-offs. You know, we're not going to get. This is the thing. We cannot and should not aim at utopia. We cannot. Right? Does that make sense? Like, we can't. Things are not going to be perfect. There's always going to be problems. We're always going to have to do trade-offs. You know? And there's nothing wrong with it. That's just what it is. I've brought this up before. It's like playing a video game with cheat codes. Okay? As soon as you put the cheat codes in, it stops being fun. It's fun for like 10 minutes. If we lived in a utopia, it'd be fun for about a year. And then we would probably tear it apart because we'd get so bored. This is why you get that cycle of hard times create good men create good times create weak men, and then weak men create bad times. That's why the cycle comes in. And it's like the human condition for all of humanity. We can look back at historical stories and religious stories, and there's always this theme of rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think the only way that stops from being such a, like, I think, in my opinion, the only way that stops from, what am I trying to say here? The only way that doesn't happen as often as it has happened is if we start, like, exploring and spreading out into the universe, right? Because then there's talk about some growth potential. We could grow for quite some time before ever having to stop. And probably reach a fall period, because there's always gonna be like a challenge. There's always gonna be something to go for and loot for and save up for and struggle for. You know, there might not be a fall. If we ever become interplanetary, if we settle on Mars and figure out how to go deeper into space, who knows, right? But I don't want to go too far. I mean, that's not in our lifetime. But maybe settling on Mars is, but the other is probably most likely not in our lifetimes. But that, you know, where that started was the idea of constant progression from shareholders who want to make a profit. Well, we have a 20% profit increase from last year. Well, we need a 21% profit increase. You know, no, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work like that. There might come a time where the way I see it is, if 3 years go by and your profit is exactly the same, I think that's success. You have done a good thing. You have a good thing going. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. And just make your money and just be happy. Again, I don't want to stop. And if you could grow and you can grow, that's fine. You know, it is probably good. Well, you know, this is the thing, like, about Walmart. Like, you can say it's probably good that Walmarts exist and that they go everywhere. And the argument being is because their stuff is cheaper and it's predictable and you know what's in it and it's got everything. And you go, yeah, but what about all the mom and pop small business brick and mortars that get their business stolen? And yeah, their stuff was more expensive and less, you know, diverse and stuff, but, like, it powered the local economy. Now, I'm a free trade guy, free economy, free market, so I'm sure there's an answer to that. And I'm sure maybe, you know, I'm not looking at it 100%, but it seems like whenever Walmart comes in, a lot of jobs, a lot of businesses lose their business, and then they can no longer, then there's less money in the economy, and so then the Walmart starts making less money because there's less money to be spent. I don't know. I've seen something like that and read something like that, and it makes sense to me, and I can see it. But yeah, the thing is because of my belief in the free market, I know that can work. Maybe there's something going on there. I don't want to get too much into the weeds there, but, you know, maybe it's not a good thing that there's Walmarts everywhere. Maybe it's not a good thing for people. Then again, maybe it is. I don't know. And maybe growing is fine, but there is a limit. There is for sure a limit. And because of that, but because of the insatiable need to keep growing and to have profit, that's why the minimum wage, it's not a great idea. And by the way, you know, if you got rid of the minimum wage, that means people would be getting paid the value of the work that they're doing. Because here's the thing. If I go in to a restaurant and I go, hey, I have no work experience. I'm just 17 years old. Do you have a position available? And they're like, yeah, we need a host. And you're like, great. How much are you willing to pay? And they're like, $4 an hour. And you go, what? $4 an hour? And they go, yeah, well, you're just standing and seating people. You're going to be on your phone most of the time anyways, doing nothing. And then we get busy, and then you help out, and then you go home. It's like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You get $4 an hour. And the 17-year-old, well, okay, yeah, but like, what if I helped out a lot? And they're like, and the manager's like, yeah, well, what do you mean? And the host's like, well, what if on my free time I'm like cleaning up the restaurant, and maybe I'm helping prep the food in the back when I'm really slow at times? Maybe I'll just find something to do. And the restaurant manager goes, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but usually hosts don't do that. They just stand up front. And you go, okay, well, how about this? You pay me $6 an hour, and you'll get a super host. And then after a month, we'll recalibrate, and I want to work my way up to $10 an hour in 6 months. And I want to do that in a way that I am adding that to your business. You are making money. You are making more money by hiring me and paying me more than never hiring me and just hiring some kid for $4 an hour. I'm going to do that for you. And the manager's like, well, you know what? Let's make a deal. We'll do this. And then in a month, if I think that you've been doing a good job, we'll talk about it and we'll see about it. And then the 17-year-old can say, okay, well, just so you know, we'll shake on it. But if you don't bring up your end of the bargain, I will have to quit. So anyways, total hypothetical, but that's the conversation we would have with people. You would learn to bargain. You would learn to advocate for yourself. And by the way, you would also learn and be highly incentivized to be a better employee because you want more money and because you know that opportunity is there. With the minimum wage, there's no opportunity for a raise. I mean, of course there is in some companies, but for the most part, it's just a given that no, this is just what you get paid for this position. But now it's like I can start out actually at a lower wage to either get work experience, to get training. Like, hey, maybe you can train me to be a host. How about this? For the first 2 weeks, while you're training me, or for the first week, you can pay me $2 an hour. And then after I'm trained up and operating on my own, pay me $5 an hour. And like, there are so many that you could really make this work. And you would teach kids and adults how to advocate for themselves, how to negotiate their wage. And then, by the way, you would stop having, these 50-year-old hosts. Now, I understand. Okay, I get it. There are some older women who are probably married, they're retired, and they just want something to do, so they go get a simple job that pays enough. That's fine. But if the hosting position, I'm sorry, but I worked for at Red Lobster. I worked for Red Lobster, and there was a older lady that worked there as a host, and she was a lovely lady. She had a temper, and she was kind of weird sometimes, but perfectly fine individual. I know she was being paid $20-something an hour because she'd worked at Red Lobster for like 10 years. It's just progressive raises. They were paying her $20 an hour to be a host, and she didn't do the stuff I did when I was a host. She just did her job. Again, great person, hard worker, maybe not worth $20 an hour, though. Maybe she could have been doing something different on a more administrative, like maybe like a manager, but she didn't want to be a manager. So, but it's like, okay, I get it. Two things can be true at once. This little old lady should be able to find a cool little side gig. But at the same time, you can't blame a business for not wanting to pay someone $20 an hour to sit in the front of the restaurant and seat people. That is a below $10 an hour job. Just in my opinion. Well, not really in my opinion. Yeah, obviously in my opinion, but I've seen profit and losses, what they call P&Ls. I've seen profit and losses reports from restaurants, and you can see just how thin the margins are most of the time. And you know that these minimum wage laws kill restaurants. They kill them. And then you have to pay more when you go out to eat, so you go out to eat less, and it's this cycle that just destroys the whole. It's why we can't have nice things. You don't want. Think about it. It's just from a logical point of view, just from a nice, calm, logical point of view. The minimum wage in your town goes up $5 an hour, and then your restaurant either has to. The few restaurants in your city now have to either get rid of their employees, cut down on the hours, or just straight up raise the price of their goods. And then you're getting paid more money now, but you go out to eat and celebrate your raise, and you realize, oh my God, prices have gone up 20%. I don't want to go out. And you go out less, and then the restaurant suffers because they're getting less people to buy their more expensive stuff. Oh, that makes sense, right? I think it makes sense. I'm going to be done for now. I'm going to stop rambling. But I definitely want to, I think I just want to get into politics. I'm so annoyed with this you shouldn't be talking politics thing. I think you can be the exact opposite, on the exact opposite side of the political spectrum for me, and you and I should still be able to just talk and to think about it and to have a logical conversation, and you can sit there and listen to me and be thinking, well, that makes sense, and you can also be thinking, well, no, that doesn't make sense, but at least you'll know what someone like me thinks. And so if you let's say you think the minimum wage is very important. I think I made a very rational and calm, apolitical argument against the minimum wage. And now you know what people like me think. And so you can either make your argument stronger in the face of that, you can change your mind, or you can empathize with people like me and re-gear your argument so that you still think it works, but it also doesn't just straw man people like me. And you hear on the other side of the argument, oh, people who don't like minimum wage they just want corporations to make more money. It's like, no, actually, I think I've shown just in the past half an hour, I don't think corporations should. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and stop now. But really, wouldn't it be nice to just chat about this kind of stuff and not have to worry about emotions and stuff? I don't know. Thank you for listening. This is Rambling in a Closet. It's Kyle. I'll see you next time.